This is Join Us in France, episode 49 for the first week of January 2015. Hello, I'm Annie, and I wish you a wonderful and happy new year. I hope you enjoyed that little ditty, and thank you to my father-in-law, David Sargent, who put that together for me. That's kind of funny. He's a very interesting composer who does usually serious music, but he also loves to do little funny ditties. So that's great. Thank you very much. Today, I'm recording this episode solo for the first time, and I'll answer a question from Matt from Somerville, Massachusetts, about traveling to France with children, which is a big question that I've wanted to talk about for a long time, so I'll try to do it justice. So, it's a new year. I have not made any personal New Year resolutions because I'm a realist. And I know it's probably futile, but I do want to improve the show in a few ways. And let me tell you how. There are some things I'm going to bring to the podcast on a regular basis. Okay, so the first thing I'm going to do differently this year with the show is that I'll answer questions on the show. I always answered questions on joinusinfrance.com, the website, but some of you listeners never really visit the website. Shame on you. But this is primarily a podcast, so it makes sense to answer on the show rather than only on the website. So I promise I will answer more of your questions on the show. And also, you, the listeners, know best what's useful information to you. And some of you are really not shy about asking, which is wonderful, and I want to encourage that. So please continue to ask away. You can use any of the comment areas of joinusinfrance.com. I get notified no matter where you write it. Or on the Facebook group. It's called Join Us in France, Travel Podcast. Or you could even email me. It's annie@joinusinfrance.com. And I will collect all the questions and answers in an FAQ, frequently asked question, that you will find on the website so that the stuff is easy to find for you. So that's the first thing. The second thing I'll do is that I'll invite more guests to come on the show for subjects that Elise and I are not very familiar with. For instance, this month we'll be hearing an interview with an amazing woman called Marion Clignier. She's a two-time Olympic silver medalist. She's won many world championships, and she is a bicycle racer. She will come on the show to tell us all about cycling in France and how lots and lots of people come to do that on their vacation. It's of great interest to many people. So, and I really know zero about this. So it's wonderful that she's accepted to come on the show to talk to us about this. The third thing that I want to do is to talk more about kid-specific activities. It's such a big subject, but I think if we're careful to add some information about that to every episode, it'll build up over time. And I might also try to build a separate resource for that, but it'll take some time. So it's not going to be ready just yet. But I really want to emphasize that because there are a lot of young families with children that come to France and that listen to the show. All right, so the show will expand horizons a little bit, which is exciting. I hope it will serve you even better, and I'm really looking forward to it. I want to thank listeners who go to joinusinfrance.com/Amazon and are helping us pay for expenses for this show that way. There is no obligation for you to do this, but if you do it, we get a small commission for everything you buy on Amazon for that day, and it doesn't cost you a penny more. So go to joinusinfrance.com/Amazon, click on your country flag, and do your shopping like you normally would on Amazon. Okay, on with the show. Here's the question that Matthew from Massachusetts sent. He says, I'm loving the podcast. It's been very helpful as I plan my family trip to France in June-July 2015. And his family is himself, spouse, and 2 girls aged 9 and 5. We are splitting time between the Loire, Dordogne, Provence, and the Alps over the course of a month. And it's likely a once-in-a-lifetime trip, he says. Yeah, it sounds like a wonderful, exciting trip. He's asking if I could consider doing a show about family travel in France. There you go. Here it is. And here are a few questions, specific things that he'd like to know more about. What do French families do on vacation? Well, that's a big question. I mean, French families do all sorts of things on vacation, but they tend to take their kids to the beach quite a lot, or a lake or a river or mountain where they can hike, and so they tend to do a lot of physically involved activities for the kids. Of course, we have several big parks such as Disney and Parc Astérix. So we have a lot of big kind of attractions like that, but there's simple things you can do every day to keep your kids happy and interested, and we'll get to those in a minute. So then he says, what are some nice kid-focused activities that we might want to do to break up the sightseeing and that would not show up in a guidebook? Yes, I'll talk about those in a minute. How do French families handle long drives? Take the ride between the Loire and the Dordogne as an example. How often are there opportunities for the kids to have a bathroom break? Are there rest stops like in the US? Yep, I will answer that question in a second. And then the third thing he says is, everything I've read says you shouldn't keep anything in your car while it is parked. I assume that means opportunities to sightsee during travel days is limited. Are there exceptions to this? Okay, so I'll answer this one right away because it's pretty quick. It really depends. If you are going to be in a if you park your car in a pay parking lot in a city, it's going to have surveillance, and there's very, very few break-ins in those places. If you're going to be parking your car on a freeway rest stop, well, there's hundreds of people around you doing the same thing. It's not very risky. It's the places where you park overnight, it's out of the way, and you never know who's going to be, on the lookout for opportunities to steal your stuff. France is really not a country that has a big problem with crime. You are perfectly safe, but it's true that if you're going to be the victim of a crime, it's most likely going to be, somebody's going to steal your wallet or your bag or something like that. So you do have to keep an eye on your valuables. What I do, if I'm going to be in the car all day going from A to B and I want to stop along the way, I just plan it so that I have a bag that I can take with me. So my camera equipment is expensive and precious. My laptop is expensive and precious. I take this stuff with me. As soon as I leave the car, I make a big production out of it. I don't try to hide it. I open the trunk and I get my bag with my valuables out, put it on my back. That's it. I'm done. So I think if you plan it a little bit like that, if people want to take my shoes and my pants, well, I mean, it's unlikely. It's only happened to me once in my life, and that was in Spain, actually, in Madrid. So Spain has a bigger problem with that kind of robbery than France does. So I wouldn't worry about it too much. And if you plan it right, if you really want to stop somewhere, why not? Just be wise and take your value, the most valuable stuff you have with you, any iPads, any phones, any cameras, this sort of electronics that can be easily sold on the black market, you definitely want to take with you. To headphones, too expensive headphones can be a problem. So now I have 11 tricks for you that will help you travel with kids in France. First one is, one way to entertain kids is to stay at hotels with a swimming pool. And you can choose hotels ahead of time and do due diligence. But you have to keep in mind that hotel pools, since you're going to be here in June and July, you say, hotel pools are not necessarily open in June. You have to ask the hotel. July is a safer bet, although if it's like this year, we had really cool rainy weather all over France, even in July. And so, maybe the pool isn't even going to be open. So ask the hotel if that's super important to you. The second trick is that your basic French hotel does not offer junior suites. And with kids the age of yours, 5 and 9, you probably want to have them in the room with you. You probably don't want to book a separate room for them. So pick your hotels in advance. Read up on TripAdvisor for recommendations of hotels that would be good for kids. My personal preference is to go to chain hotels, because if I go to a Novotel or an Ibis or something like that, I know exactly what I'm going to get anywhere I go. You can, on their website, they will have, all the logos of all the services they offer. I will know if there's going to be an exercise room, if there's going to be, a playground, a pool, that sort of thing. So that's really important for you to do your research in advance. That was the second thing. The third thing is, in France, well, if your kids get cranky anywhere, it doesn't have to be in France. One of the ways to deal with that is to have snacks with you. And let me tell you, in France, we have the most wonderful candy, for example, and the cookie aisle is to die for. And these are going to be different than what they're used to in the US, but I would bet that they will like them. So go to the cookie candy aisle, stock up on a few things. You will find some really nice juices too. I think it really helps. The fourth thing is, don't be in a hurry. If your kid wants to climb on a bench for 15 minutes or whatever it is, so long as they're not getting hurt, let them, And that's a problem when you travel. That's more of a psychological thing. You want to get places, and you're going to be cranky yourself because you just want to get there. And, it's better if you take it slow, plan for everything to take forever, and then you won't be disappointed. There are small playgrounds all over France. You can ask for aire de jeu, and I'll spell it out on the. You can go to joinusinfrance.com/49 and you'll see this stuff spelled out. Aire de jeu or parc pour enfants, where they're all over. You might not even see them. Sometimes they're so small, they're just in a little area that you won't notice, but they're fun. Kids tend to like those. The fifth tip is, when you get to France, go to a bookstore or a large supermarket and find French coloring books or little toys that they're not used to, because it'll be new and interesting and different, and and you can make a big deal about, this is for the trip, this is for tomorrow, we're taking a long ride, and so you get to play with this tomorrow on the trip. They'll look forward to it. I think that's a good thing to do with kids anyway. Okay, trip number 6 is that with kids, it may be better to sleep in the same hotel for a few nights rather than change hotels daily. Now, that's entirely up to you. You know your kids better than I do, obviously. And you need to decide. But I found for our family that when our daughter was very young, it was easier to just find a central location, spend a few nights, do day trips to various things we wanted to see. But that's up to you. It's really, but kids tend to like to know that tonight we're going back to the hotel and there's going to be the playground or there's going to be the pool. And, that really helps. If you know where you're going back that night, I think that would be helpful. The 7th trick is to involve your kids in the planning. Now, Google Images. Before Google, I don't know how people did this, but now it's amazing. You can go to Google anything, places that you think you're interested in, look at images of them, Google Images, and, let them tell you if it looks interesting or what's exciting, what they look forward to. Visiting, etc. You can tell a lot by doing a little bit of research ahead of time with that. And also it helps them build expectation and interest in what you're going to be doing. So I think that's a great thing to do. 8th trick is, if you spend a lot of time in the car, especially in France, you will see a lot of road signs. French people are crazy. They put road signs everywhere. Teach them how to recognize them and how they're different from what you're used to in America, for example. There are some great coloring pages that are designed to teach French kids to tell the road signs apart. So I'll put some on the website. I think that's a really fun thing to do, because then the kids can look out for, this is this funky sign that's, that means this funky thing. And trust me, there are funky signs in France. So that would be fun, I think, especially if you drive along the smaller roads and not the freeways. Freeways are, the signs are not quite as interesting. Okay. Point number 9 is that kids usually love anything that has to do with animals. And in France, we have a lot of fermes pédagogiques. So these are farms that are set up to welcome the public and to have activities for kids. So they'll have the kids pick fruit or take care of animals, or, those are really, really fun. And you'll get to meet some French people. It's usually very small operations. It's usually a family with kids themselves that open their doors on specific days to welcome people, and it's never crowded. It's not like, in America you have these big petting zoos and stuff. It's not like that. It's much, much, much smaller. You may be the only visitors on that day. So it's very fun because it's one-on-one, and you'll get to talk to people. And I'm sure if they do that, they know that they have English speakers come through, so it shouldn't be too big of a problem. The other thing kids love to do is anything that has to do with boats. In France, there are lots of areas where you can, instead of visiting on foot, you can visit on the river. The Dordogne, for example, is really famous for that. So definitely, I would choose that over a walking tour for little kids. Bicycles too. Big cities always have bikes for rent. I don't know with a 5-year-old if it's that good of an idea, but other families that have kids more appropriate age, you can rent a bike and see the city that way. Of course, I would make sure to use the protected bike paths because, French people, we drive a little crazy, but it's better than used to. So, all right, number 10, pick the right museum. There are so many great museums for kids in France, but you have to pick the right ones. For instance, you don't mention that you're going to Paris, so I will leave out anything in Paris, but there's a ton of them all over the country. One in the Provence area in Uzès, in the Gare, is the Haribo Museum. So that's the candy museum. And I visited it, and it's very fun. And of course, we walked out of there. You walk out of there, and you're into the candy store. And I think we must have bought like 20 pounds of candy. It was terrible. The prices are amazing. It took us like a year to eat all the candy, but it was very fun. It's a great visit, and the kids would love it. There's also chocolate museums, doll museum, museum of magic, museum of strange objects, museum of war, museum of you name it. So I will put a list of some of the ones that I've seen on journeysintfrance.com/49 or on the FAQ tab, but there are websites that will tell you all sorts of things about museums in France. Just, I think the ones I would completely avoid with children are the municipal museums that you find in minor cities. If like in Toulouse, we have a museum called Musée des Augustins, which is a fine museum. There's nothing wrong with it, but there's nothing for kids there. It's like statues and paintings and things that they can't touch. It's not going to be interesting to them. So all these sorts of museums, before you go into a museum, look it up, because if it doesn't have some sort of attraction for the kids, they're going to get bored to tears. So that's something to consider too. And the last trick is that there are a lot of castles that you can visit in France, and some of them are amazing at making the visits appealing to kids, and some of them make zero effort. It's honestly so you need to go. There's a website called familiscope.fr. I'll put a link on the website. They let you choose by area for the sort of visit you want. So if you want something more physical, you can tell them. If you want a castle visit, you can select, you can narrow it down by place and by type of visit, and even by the age of the children. So that's a really good resource. It's all in French, but Google Translate should do the trick if you don't speak any French. So that's my tricks. Now, some of the questions you asked were, how do you handle the long drives? That was your second question. Okay. what you need to do is to decide if you want to go from A to B using the toll roads, les autoroutes, which are blue signs, and most of them you have to pay fees. Not all of them, but most of them. Or if you want to use the smaller, the free roads. There are advantages and disadvantages to both. If you use the small roads, you will see more of the country, but it's really painfully slow. France really doesn't have any flyover country, places that you totally want to avoid. But you might be going through a bunch of unremarkable villages and towns where no tourists goes, and so it's just provincial France, and the choices for food are going to be very limited. For instance, in my village, where we never get any tourists, not that it's ugly or anything, but it's just not a touristy place. We don't have a single restaurant in the village. We don't even have a supermarket. We have a little kind of grocery store that's kept by this one lady, but she's mostly open in the evenings and on weekends, where it's the corner store that's open, the convenience corner store, but it's not open all the time. So the small villages are good, but not ideal in many ways. So what I do personally is, when I want to go from A to B and I know there's 400 kilometers to do, I just get on the freeway, pay the tolls, get there. But maybe that's not what you want. It's really a choice for you to take. Also, if you go through all the small towns, you will need to keep a French schedule because the restaurants are not going to be open all the time. So show up at the restaurant between 12:30 at lunchtime, 12:30 to 1:30, and at dinner time 7:30 to 9 or so, and that's it. The rest of the time they're not going to serve you. So you need to keep that in mind. Now, if you decide to go on the toll roads, you'll be able to go much faster, and yes, you will have all sorts of services along the way. There are, I couldn't think of any way to compare it, but it's like 7-Eleven type stores. So you have so you walk in, you have a bunch of vending machines for all sorts of coffees and soups and whatever. You will often have like these massage chairs. You will have a 7-Eleven kind of store with sandwiches and chips and ice creams and drinks and all sorts of things. You usually also have a restaurant or two. You might have a store that makes specialty sandwich, and another one that will make kind of steak fries type things. I mean, those are fast kind of restaurants, but they're sit-down restaurants, so they're pretty good. You will also find good, clean bathrooms in most of those places, and you will find those every 30 to 50 miles on a French freeway. You need to recognize the sign. I'll put them on the website. Because they're all kind of the same all over the country. Once you've seen it, you'll recognize it easily. But I really, really recommend that you go to the stores that have a restaurant attached to it, a gas station and a restaurant. Because if you stop, we do also have just bathroom breaks along the freeways, but those are usually horrible. I mean, I don't think I can remember. I don't remember a good one anywhere. So I would avoid stopping in the areas that if the sign just says it's a bathroom, don't stop there. Wait until you get to one that has the signs for gas and restaurant and more things. And also on high travel days, and you can figure out what the high travel days are in France. If you go to joinusinfrance.com/links, I put a link in there for the France driving forecast. Because French people are kind of like lemmings, we all go on vacation on the same days. So you want to avoid driving on those days because you're just going to be stuck in traffic. So look for the France Driving Podcast. Again, it's joinusinfrance.com/links. And But the thing is, around those high travel days, at the rest stops along the freeways, they will also offer activities for the kids. What they want to do is to keep families on not driving longer, because then they can rest. And the other thing I want to bring up is that there are going to be a lot of activities that you can take your kids to that are going to be in French. So, should you take your kids to things that, even if they don't speak French? And my answer is absolutely yes. Because, first of all, it's summer. There are visitors from all over the world, but definitely all over Europe. And your kids probably will not be the only ones who don't speak French. So if you happen to be at a rest stop along a freeway, and there's you can see that there's some activity going on because there's tents and they've set up bikes and whatever. Go see, because it's the language barrier is not really going to be a language barrier, not to the kids, and there's no reason anybody is expecting your kids to speak French or learn French. There's no pressure on them, people will adapt. So anything that has to do with drawing or jumping or doing things that are not language based, they will do great. Of course, I wouldn't take them to a poetry workshop or something, because they can't do that. But that's very, most things they can do, anything physical they can do, anything where, they can draw and all of that they can do. So that's it. Okay, well, I hope that's been helpful. The episode is going to be a little shorter today, but it's the new year. There's so many parties to go to. I don't know what. So I look forward to talking to you next week, and I hope this was helpful. Again, thank you if you are making an effort to support the show by going through our website before you purchase things on Amazon. It's very, very helpful. That's joinusinfrance.com/Amazon. All right, we'll talk to you next week. Au revoir.